Mr. President, our colleague, the gentleman from Nueva Ecija, the Honorable Senator Robin Hood Padilla, is seeking the floor to deliver a manifestation, Mr. President. May he be recognized.
Senator Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pong pinunong mayorya. Ito po ay point of inquiry lamang. Meron lamang po akong sanang gustong idulog sa kapulungan upang mabigyan po ng kaliwanagan. Ito po ay bunsod ng mga resolusyon na inihain ng inyong abang lingkod upang talakayin sa ilalim ng komiting aking pinamumunuan ang Public Information and Mass Media. Meron po akong serye ng mga resolusyon na nagmumungkahi po ng mga pagdinig patungkol sa mga mahalagang issue na sa aking paniniwala ay dapat nagkakaroon ng malawakang talakayan at information dissemination para sa ating mga kababayan. Ngunit sa kasamaang palad po, hindi po ito nare-refer sa Public Information and Mass Media o di kaya ay nagiging secondary committee lamang po ang sa amin. Hayaan po ninyong basahin ko ang Section 28, Rule 10 ng Rules of the Senate. Ito po ang jurisdiksyon ng committee. All matters relating to public information, mass communication, and broadcast services, the implementation of the provision of the Constitution regarding ownership and management of mass media and the advertising industry, the development and promotion of information technology, and all matters relating to the artistic standards and quality of the motion picture and television industry. Nais ko pong mabigyan linaw kung ano ang definisyon at limitasyon ng public information sa konteksto po ng mandato ng Committee on Public Information and Mass Media. Tid naman po natin ang napakahalagang papel ng pampublikong impormasyon pagdating sa pagtataguyod ng mabuting pamamahala o good governance. Critical po sa ating pamumuno na siguruhing nararamdaman ng ating mga kababayan ang mga programa at proyekto ng gobyerno tungkol sa mga importanteng paksa. Ngunit, paano po nila ito mararamdaman? Una pa lamang ay hindi naman nila naiintindihan ang ating mga ginagawa. Dahil po sa hindi malinaw na definisyon ng public information, nais ko po sanang maghain ng kaukulang amyenda sa tamang panahon tungkol sa jurisdiction ng Committee on Public Information and Mass Media. Yun lamang po, Ginoong Pangulo. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Senator Padilla. The Majority Leader wants to respond.
Thank you, Mr. President. The manifestation of Senator Padilla will be referred to the Committee on Rules as appropriate. Mr. President,
If I may add, sa pagkakalam ko po, Senator Padilla, sa pagkakausap ko rito sa ating Secretariat, yung mga ipon yung panukalang batas na inahin, katulad nung meron yata pinag-usapan tungkol sa balikatan, ay nararapat lang yata na i-refer sa pangunahing committee, ng Committee on National Defense. At secondary committee lang po ang inyong on Public Information. Gayon din ang mga patungkol sa climate change, ang pangunahing committee po ay ang Environment, tama? Environment and Natural Resources. Ang pangalawang secondary committee po, yung inyong committee, yung Committee on Public Information. Yan po ay sinasabi po ng ating Secretariat.
Opo, mahal na Ginoong Pangulo. Yun nga po yung gusto po nating liwanagin. Kaya nga po tayo ay humihingi po ng pag-amyenda sapagkat nakikita po natin, mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, na sa panahon po ngayon, mas marami na pong fake news. Natatalo na po ng fake news ang mga tunay na dapat ay ibinabalita at ipinararating ng gobyerno sa taong bayan. Katulad po nung isang beses, narinig po natin ang ating kasama na si Senator J.B. Ejercito, sinabi din po niya na yung patungkol po sa Universal Health Law na hindi din po alam ng taong bayan ang patungkol dito. Nakakalungkot po yun, mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, na hindi po natin bibigyan ng bagong jurisdiction ang ating pong public information sapagkat sa ngayon po, mahal na Pangulo, umaasa na lang po ang taong bayan sa kung sino-sinong mga vlogger na nagsasalita sa social media, yun na po ang kanilang pinaniniwalaan. Ang hinihingi lang po natin, mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, na magkaroon po ng talakayan patungkol po dito sa mandato ng ating pong Komite ng Public Information. Yun lamang po, Ginoong Pangulo. Marami pong salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Senator Padilla.
Mr. President, if I may, Mr. President.
Senator
Just a
Villarreal.
very short manifestation and in connection to the statements made by our distinguished colleague, I think it's about time, Mr. President, that we look into all this proliferation of fake news. I remember last Congress, we filed a bill regarding anti-fake news bill. And I think it is important to note na kung ang impormasyon ay mali, mapatunayang mali, ngunit ang intensyon ay tama, Mr. President, madali mo ma-justify. But if it is clearly, Mr. President, trying or spreading lies, coming up with a totally absurd, ridiculous information, then dapat magkaroon ng panagutan ang mga ito. Because, Mr. President, I commiserate with our colleague kasi I think lahat naman ho tayo na natatamaan ng mga kung sino-sinong vloggers or media outfits. Yung iba nga po, kahit mainstream, Mr. President, kahit mainstream, hindi naman natin sasabihin, lahat laging katotohanan yung kanilang sinasabi. But I'm just concerned, Mr. President, doon sa pananagutan, yung word na pananagutan. Kasi, for example, Mr. President, can you imagine a media outlet that would say, for example Mr. President, natalo yung UST sa UAAP, kasanan ni Joel Villanueva. But that's the headline, Mr. President. Bigyan ka ng mas malalim na topic, Mr. President, or I'm sorry for the word, mas bastos, Mr. President, para lang mag-clickbait, kunyari, Mr. President, and walang pananagutan, Mr. President. Zero accountability. I'm not even sure, Mr. President, if the kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas can actually, are they actually doing its part to regulate, Mr. President, or at least have that oversight function, Mr. President. So I feel, Mr. President, that this is important considering na yung fake news, lalong-lalo na, ay laganap sa ating bayan. Just to put that on record, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Villanueva.
Apo, Ginoong Pangulo, bilang panghuli lamang po, gusto ko lamang pong ipaliwanag muli na malinaw po sa ating konstitusyon, dito po sa Section 7, ito po ang sinasabi dito, the right of the people to information on matters of public concern shall be recognized. Access to official records and to documents and papers pertaining to official acts. Ginoong Pangulo, kapag tayo po ang nagpapatawag ng hearing dito po sa Committee on Public Information, nakakalungkot po. Ang lagi pong sinasagot sa amin ng mga taga-gobyerno, hindi, nag-hearing na kami doon sa isang committee, hindi na kami pupunta dyan. Yun po ang nakakalungkot, Ginoong Pangulo. Gusto ko lamang pong ipaalala muli sa lahat na wala pong pinakamataas na batas kundi ang konstitusyon. At ang konstitusyon po, sinasabi, maliwanag ang kapangyarihan ng public information. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat po uli, Ginoong
Thank you,
Pangulo.
Senator Padilla. And Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2555 under Committee Report number 191. This is the bill amending the Motorcycle Crime Prevention Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
The parliamentary status of the measure, Mr. President, is that we have closed the period of committee amendments, and with the consent of the body, I move to open the period of individual amendments, and that I may be recognized as well, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senator Padilla.
Sir, meron lang po akong gustong itanong sa atin pong madyo. Mr. President, kanino po natin to i-refer?
Mr. President, to the Committee on Rules, taking into consideration the previous manifestation by the Senate President Pro Tem that the Committee on Defense, be likewise be given the opportunity to take part in the committee hearings as the primary committee, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. President.
Yes, you are correct. Senator Padilla.
Hindi po ba pag-uusapan muna yung amenda natin na madyo? Ginoong Pangulo, hindi po ba natin pag-uusapan muna ito sa Committee on Rules para kung amendahan natin yung ating Pwede po mag-request po ng 1-minute suspension lang ako.
Session suspended for sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Migrant Workers and the chairperson of the Senate panel, I have the honor to present the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2221 entitled An Act Providing for the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, and House Bill number 7325 entitled An Act Instituting the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers. The Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of the Senate Bill number 2221 and House Bill number 7325 of December 13, 2023, in effect, is hereby withdrawn. The Senate and the House panels met last May 20, 2024, to discuss and come up with a reconciled and improved version of the reconsidered bill, which was referred to both houses for further review. Mr. President, I would like to thank our fellow conferees from the Senate, Senate President Jesus Cordero himself, who was still a conferee when this BICAM report was adopted and prior to his election. Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Amy Marcos, Minority Leader Coco Pimentel, and Deputy Minority Floor Leader Risa Ontiveros, and our conferees from the House of Representatives, led by the new chairperson of the House Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs, Representative Jude Asidre, together with Representatives Marisa Del Mar Magsino, Sandro Gonzalez, Kaimer Adan Olaso, and Marlene Primicias Agabas as members of their collaborative effort and patience in order to come up with this bicameral report. Thus, it is my honor to report to this body, Mr. President, the following. Number one, the conferees agreed to adopt the reconsidered bill on the matter as the working draft, with the primary goal of addressing concerns regarding coverage of the bill. Number two, Section 3 objectives was created. Number three, Section 4 coverage was amended to focus on Filipino seafarers on board ships, vessels plying international waters, added a provision to address the concerns of international ships governed by specific agreement, which reads as follows. For ships or vessels plying international waters but are governed by international treaties or agreements, the same shall be observed, and the pertinent agencies shall exercise regulatory provisions over the seafarers on board, subject to appropriate guidelines and conditions that may be issued by the Department of Transportation, Marina, DMW, DOLE, and other concerned agencies. Number four, a new Section 5, applicability of this act to domestic seafarers, was created to clarify which sectors are applicable to only to domestic seafarers. Number five, Section 6, definition of terms. New terms were defined. A, domestic maritime degree. B, international maritime degree. C, ladderization. D, seafarer, and excluded cadets in the definition. While the term employment contract was deleted, 6 on Section 7, right to just terms and conditions of work, clarified medical care for domestic and overseas seafarers. Number 7, on Section 9, right to educational advancement and training at reasonable and affordable cost, placed Marina ahead of CHED and NMP in development of GOD curriculum. Number 8, on Section 11, right to information of a seafarer's family or next of kin, clarified role of DMW and DOLE over overseas and domestic seafarers, respectively. Number 9, on Section 12, right to safe passage and safe travel, changed third countries to other countries. Number 10, Section 22, right to a fair medical assessment. 28, pre-employment medical examination, PEME, and 29, medical certificate, clarified medical needs of overseas and domestic seafarers. Number 11, on Section 30, training and qualifications, clarified the required training and qualifications for overseas and domestic seafarers upon the recommendation of Marina DOTR. Number 12, overseas seafarers and the titles of the following chapters. Chapter 6, manning agencies for overseas seafarers. Chapter 9, medical care and maritime occupational safety and health standards for overseas seafarers. Chapter 10, termination of employment of overseas seafarers. Chapter 11, dispute resolution for overseas seafarers. Chapter 12, repatriation for overseas seafarers. Chapter 13, reintegration for overseas seafarers. 13, on Chapter 8, accommodation, recreational and sanitation facilities, food and catering in ocean-going ships. That title was amended to clarify its application to ocean-going ships. 14, we removed all sections related to domestic Filipino seafarers except the section on rescue and converted it into a separate chapter, which now reads, Chapter 14, Emergency Rescue of Domestic Seafarers. 15, on Chapter 17, Green Lane for Overseas and Domestic Seafarers. We rewarded a title and revised the language. 16, under Chapter 18, Education and Training of Seafarers and Cadets. The jurisdiction of Marina over maritime education was clarified and roles itemized, and the section on Curriculum Committee was deleted. Number 17, on Section 57, a second paragraph was amended, and a new third paragraph was added as proposed by the House panel and adopted by the Bicameral Conference Committee to read as follows. The third doctor's assessment shall strictly adhere to the schedule of disabilities as provided in the standard employment contract or the applicable collective bargaining agreement as warranted. The title of the section was also amended to read Determination of Disability, Grading, or Fitness to Work. 18. The Section 59 of the recalled bill was deleted as approved and adopted by the Bicameral Conference Committee. 19. Section 16, or Section 17, rather, crew competence was amended to add Marina. 20. On Section 28, compliance and certification amended to clarify the issuance of a maritime labor certificate and the certificate of compliance for domestic ships by DOLE. 21. On Section 69, inspection and enforcement amended to distinguish inspection and enforcement of ships under 3 different categories to clarify. 22, created a new Section 74, jurisdiction over maritime education, to clarify the jurisdiction of Marina and CHED with respect to the education and training of cadets. Succeeding Section 75 and 76 were likewise adjusted to reflect changes made on Section 74. 23, Section 77, requirements for maritime higher education institutions, amended by removing the percentage requirements for training slots. The same was made on Section 78 for Philippine registered ships. 24, on Section 85, role of government agencies, the roles of CHED, DFA, DMW, DOH, DOLE, Marina, and NLRC were adjusted in line with changes introduced in the entire bill. 25, on Section 85, G, National Conciliation and Mediation Board was added as another concerned agencies with specific role. 26, Section 85J, role of OWA was amended to include giving of free legal assistance to its member seafarers. Number 27, a new Section 94, creating offices and hiring appropriate personnel, was created for Marina and other concerned agencies to ensure the effective implementation of these acts. Mr. President, allow me to emphasize again that this Magna Carta of Seafarers is not the final law that we will work on to protect our seafarers. We commit to addressing concerns regarding the efficacy of the Seafarers Protection Act and to review and amend the necessary provisions of the Labor Code. Especially on the rules of procedure for both NLRC and NCMB, such that appeals and judgment in maritime cases shall be more attuned to the pressing concerns of our seafarers and maritime stakeholders. Mr. President, I now move that we approve the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2221 and House Bill number 7325 on an act providing for Magna Carta of Seafarers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Senator Villanueva is recognized.
This is not an objection, Mr. President. May I just be allowed to make a very short manifestation, Mr.
The
President?
gentleman may proceed.
Thank you very much being part of this measure where we, all of us work very, very hard. Isang malaking karangalan po, Ginoong Pangulo, para sa atin na maging parte din ng Bicameral Conference Committee ng panukalang ito, ang Magna Carta o Filipino Seafarers. Isang batas po na para sa proteksyon ng ating mahigit kumulang na 580,000 na marino sa iba't ibang dako ng mundo. Sa wakas po, Ginoong Pangulo, ay magkakaroon na ng isang tunay na Magna Carta para sa ating mga marino matapos ang halos 2 dekadang pakikipaglaban po dito. Nagpapasalamat po tayo sa ating pinuno kay Senator Raffy Tulfo, the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Migrant Workers, dahil karamihan po sa ating mga isinulong at ipinanukala na mga probisyon ay nanatiling nakapaloob sa BICAM report ng Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers Just to put on record, Mr. President, kasama dito yung pag-align ng mga provision ng Magna Carta sa Republic Act number 11641 o ang Department of Migrant Workers Act, pagpapatibay ng maritime occupational safety and health standards, paglalatag ng Green Lane protocols, pagkakaroon ng transition at support programs para sa mga marino na hindi pa muli nakakasampa sa barko, at pagpapalawak po sa lambong ng proteksyon sa ating mga seafarers na sadyang exposed po sa abuso, exploitation at unfair labor practice. Mr. President, I just want to put on record, and I'm very happy to join the gentleman from Isabela and Davao in reporting to the body that we emphasize that the Commission on Higher Education maintains jurisdiction over maritime higher education institutions, which is consistent po, Mr. President, with Section 3, Letter D of the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, which refers to CHED's policies and rules on education of maritime students and training cadets. And furthermore, Mr. President, last but not the least, yung Marinas Administration over maritime education should be interpreted in conjunction with the mandate of the CHED pursuant to RA 7722 or the Higher Education Act of 1994. Mr. President, sa pangkalahatan, ang panukala pong ito ay isang katibayan ng ating pagpapahalaga sa ating mga marino. Ito po ay pagpapatunay sa ating dedikasyon na itaas ang dignidad at antas ng pamumuhay ng ating overseas at domestic seafarers, ang ating mga bagong bayani. Kaya, Mr. President, sinasamahan ko po ang motion ng ating kasamahan para iratipika ang nasabing panukala. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo.
The
Mr. President,
remarks of the gentleman from Bulacan are duly noted and well taken.
Mr. President,
The Deputy Minority Leader is seeking the floor.
Mr. President, may I also move that the joint explanation of the conference committee be inserted into the records of the Senate?
The chair will defer action on the motion until we have heard Senator Ontiveros, and thereafter we will act on the same. Senator Ontiveros is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Salamat, Mr. President, at magandang gabi po. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and to say thank you and to give credit where credit is due. Unang-una, salamat kay Chair Rafi Tulfo sa kanyang paninindigan at pagsisikap para maayos ang ilang issues tungkol sa bond. Alam ko sa puso niya, tulad ko, dapat ang Magna Carta of Seafarers should serve the interest of all Filipino seafarers. Salamat din sa aking minority leader, Senator Coco Pimentel, sa pagsuporta at sa pakikiisa sa tunay na diwa ng batas na ito. At kay Senator Joel Villanueva, sa kanyang walang sawang suporta sa mga issues ng mga manggagawa, partikular sa mga marino. Kay Comsec Alan at sa mga masisipag nating mga legis staff, sa kanilang ambag at sakripisyo para mabuo ang Magna Carta of Seafarers. The Magna Carta of Seafarers is very close to my heart because every Filipino seafarer deserves greater protection from abuses and violations of their rights and welfare. This law is for every overseas Filipino worker, seafarer, who has been called a modern-day hero because of his or her economic contributions through remittances, and most importantly, because of their sacrifices in being homesick to give a comfortable life to their loved ones. Narinig namin kayo, mga kababayan. Hindi sapat na manatili lamang silang mga buhay na bayani habang sila ay nakikipagsapalaran at nagbabanat ng buto sa karagatan na walang sapat na batas na magtataguyod ng kanilang mga karapatan at proteksyon. At sa wakas, ngayon ay magiging isang ganap na batas na. The Magna Carta should be the anchor of every Filipino. No one should be left behind, including cadets. Every Filipino seafarer's rights should be protected in accordance with international labor organizations, Maritime Labor Convention, and most especially with the Philippine Constitution. Sabi ko nga kanina, give credit where credit is due. At isang taos-pusong at walang humpay na pasasalamat at pagpupugay sa ating mga Filipino seafarers. Kayo po talaga ang bida dito, higit sa lahat. Mabuhay ang bawat overseas Filipino worker, mabuhay ang bawat marinong Filipino. Saludo ako sa inyong pagsisikap. Patuloy kaming susuporta sa inyong kapakanan at seguridad kasama ng inyong pamilya. Maraming pong salamat, Mr. President.
Chair thanks the distinguished lady, and her remarks are duly noted and well taken. Now, acting on the previous motions of
Yes, Mr. President.
majority leaders recognized.
Corollary to the motion of Senator Tulfo, I move that we approve and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2221 and House Bill 7325, and let the text of the joint explanation be deemed read into the records of the chamber. So moved, Mr. President.
There is a motion. Hearing no objection, the same is approved. The Bicameral Conference Committee